Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University.
Hello friends, let's now take up the last unit of the history of ELT. In this presentation, we are going to discuss developments in ELT in post-independence India. English language teaching has a rich history, and in India, after independence, the teaching of English has acquired very different, various kinds of roles, and it becomes interesting for us to reflect upon some of them and see what it means for teachers and learners of English today. During this presentation, we are going to look at some of the recommendations of education commissions established by the government of India after independence. We are going to see how English is now an Indian language, and we are going to see some of the approaches like the structural approach, the communicative language teaching, and the ModCom approach of Gujarat. And of course, we will consider the present situation in terms of the national education policy adopted in 2020. The first important thing to note is that after independence, the government of India was seized by how to Indianize the entire education system. The question of not adopting British policies as they were laid down in pre-independence period, and arriving at a set of policies which were seen as developed by Indian educationists was an important goal for the government of India. In 1950, India adopted its constitution, and it is important to note, important to remember, that the Constitution of India is written in English. What does this mean? It means that although India is proud of all its languages as such, although India is proud of the heritage of administration, of political governance, of religion, of culture, at the same time, it is important that India wants to function in an efficient manner, and India has decided to adopt English as an important instrument of governance. Therefore, in the Constitution of India, English is described as an associate official language. Initially, it was stated that it will be treated as associate official language for a period of time, and after that, a national language developed by Indian states will be adopted as the official language. But the ground reality today is that all the major languages of India are now described as national languages, and English is one of the Indian languages, and it is an associate official language. Before India adopted its constitution, actually soon after independence, the independence was declared in 1947. In 1948, the government appointed a commission under the chairmanship of Dr. Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan. The commission arrived at a set of recommendations about reforming the education system of India. And what are some of the recommendations? The first recommendation was that new universities should be established across all states of India. That India had some universities already established by the British government, but India needed many more universities, and therefore it was recommended that we should go in a big way for establishment of universities in India. The second recommendation of Radhakrishnan Commission was to provide knowledge and wisdom for a holistic development of the personality. This is a philosophical statement, and it was an important part of the recommendation in the sense that it was considered that under the British rule, the education system that had developed was largely utilitarian and fractured. Therefore, the new education system to be developed by India should aim at a holistic development of the personality of the learner. Along with these recommendations, Dr. Radhakrishnan's recommendation also was for encouraging proficient use of English at the higher education level in India. It was realized, although there was a strong anti-English feeling because of the independence movement, because there was a very strong and staunch support for Indianization of the entire system, there was an anti-English feeling among the people, among educationists also. But Dr. Radhakrishnan very rightly pointed out that education at the higher level, at the university level, would be possible only if the learners could use English in a proficient manner. Therefore, we should note that the very first education commission in independent India included, among the various recommendations, included a recommendation to encourage proficient use of English. This was followed in 1952 by Dr. Mudaliar Commission. The Mudaliar Commission focused on school education. As it happened, various states of India had different patterns of school education. Therefore, the Mudaliar Commission emphatically recommended that for a national education policy, it is important to adopt a uniform pattern of school education. Dr. Mudaliar also recommended the establishment of multi-purpose schools for vocational skills. This was in line with other elements of Nayi Talim. Nayi Talim, or the new education system proposed by a group of educationists who met in Wardha under the leadership of Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi. They had proposed that education should not be just an academic exercise, and that it should focus on the training of 3H: the heart, the hand, and the head. The training of the heart in Nai Talim meant that the citizens should be compassionate. The training of the hand meant that all of them should have some vocational skills. And the training of the head, of course, emphasized academic achievement in scholarly subjects, in scholarly disciplines. However, the criticism that Mudaliar Commission received was that what they had proposed was not a practical approach. The parents and learners in India were not in favor of vocationalization of education at that time. Vocational skills were seen as lower grade training, and academic scholarly achievement was seen as first grade training. Therefore, the recommendations of Mudaliar Commission were accepted in a half-hearted manner. In 1964, Dr. Kothari Commission was established, and Dr. Kothari presented his recommendations in 1966. It is a highly evocative report that Dr. Kothari produced. He started by saying that the destiny of India is now being shaped in her classrooms, which showed the kind of importance he attached to the process of education for young Indians. He also noted that in a world based on science and technology, it is education that determines the level of prosperity, welfare, and security of people. So his recommendation was that there should be a very strong foundation of science and technology. And he also recommended that education can be instrumented as a force of social, economic, and political change. Now, that is going one step further. All the earlier commissions focused on the quality of education in school. They tried to remedy whatever ills they located in the education system. But Dr. Kothari, for the first time, saw the role of education in forming a very healthy foundation for the whole society. Education not only for the individual, not only for utilitarian purposes, not only for some idealistic but individual goals, education for social, economic, and political change. These were very optimistic, and these words were welcomed by people in India as well as outside India. Kothari Commission's report, therefore, has been quoted more than any other commission report by people in schools and colleges, by people in teacher training institutions. However, the recommendations of Kothari Commission were also more of a rhetoric than a plan of action. So the national policy on education in 1986 was given the task of not only presenting some recommendations, but also arriving at a plan of action. And therefore, the national policy on education at that time said regional languages should be promoted and developed. Why was the shift from national language, creation of a national language, or promotion of English proficiency? Why was the shift to regional language seen as an important element? Because, as it was noted in the report, unless this is done, the creative energies of the people will not be released. Standards of education will not improve. Knowledge will not spread to the people, which is true. If education was to actually focus on creativity, on critical thinking, then it has to be done in the regional language. But this was not to be done at the cost of English. Therefore, along with this recommendation, the three-language formula was given equal importance. It was to be adopted at secondary school level itself. And the three-language formula included one local language, one national language, and one international language, which meant English, in fact. The new education policy of 86 actually said that special importance was to be given on the study of English and other international languages. So the focus on English continued throughout, right from the first Education Commission, from Radhakrishnan Commission, to the National Policy on Education in 86. All education commissions made sure that adequate importance was to be given to English language. And this is now followed by the National Education Policy 2020. Some of the prominent features of the National Education Policy are like this. First of all, it proposes a new curricular structure. The earlier structure was 10 plus 2 plus 3, 10 years of schooling, 2 years of higher secondary education, and 3 years of undergraduate education. Now, in the new policy of 2020, it is recommended that there should be a 5-year foundation period, including preschool of 3 years and the first standard and second standard. So first 2 years of schooling. 5 years should be seen as foundational years for literacy and numeracy skills. Then there should be 3 years of primary education, 3 years of secondary education, and 4 years of undergraduate education. So this is a new curricular structure that has been proposed and officially adopted by the Government of India and by the various state governments. It says clearly that education till grade 5 should be provided in mother tongue or regional language. However, it says that any language will not be forcibly applied and any learner will not be forced to study a particular language or adopt a particular language as medium of instruction. The first 5 years till grade 5, mother tongue education or regional language education is supported by UNESCO. It is supported by international scholars and educationists, and therefore it is hoped that this recommendation will go a long way. However, after the first 5 years, it is pointed out that there should be a multilingual and multidisciplinary model of education. So, mother tongue should not be seen in either or mode. So it is not that mother tongue should be studied at the cost of national or international language, which is a euphemism for English in any case. It is now proposed that education system should be multilingual. There is place for more than one language, and therefore English should get adequate emphasis in the process of education. At the same time, it should also be multidisciplinary. So, arts and science should not be seen as opposed to each other. They should not be seen as either or. Even arts and science, or arts and commerce and management, should be seen as complementing each other. The new policy, national policy, also emphasizes vocationalization of education. It favors availability of vocational skills, and it is recommended that there should be multiple entry-exit system. In the earlier model, once a student gets into the education system, he or she was seen as going through the entire curricular structure, whether it is 10 plus 2 plus 3 or 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4, in a linear, unidirectional method. Now, it is envisaged that learners may decide to take a break, that they may need financial support for themselves, for the family, and for various other reasons. They may go out and work, go out and play at the state or national level for a year or two, and then come back to education. One last point to be noted in our discussion on National Education Policy 2020 is that it is now realized that we should have EdTech enabled learning, which means that education technology should play an important part in the delivery of learning. This brings us to the end of the major features of NEP 2020. Now, in a moment, let us try to summarize important things for English language teaching as included in this new policy. The first thing to be noted is that during the first 5 years, the instruction should be provided in mother tongue or regional language as medium of instruction. What it means, however, is that English can be, and practically it will be, one of the things that children learn, because we are told that our learners should be multilingual. So at a later stage, even the medium of instruction may be English, but right from the beginning, the child should be allowed to become multilingual or should be encouraged to become multilingual. That is one important point. The second important point is that we are going to use education technology in a major way. That will also influence the delivery of English in India, especially in Gujarat. The situation in Gujarat is often described as one where the child does not get exposed to English outside the classroom. Although, when you take note of technology, we realize that the media now has a lot of English in it. And in addition to that, the media will also get into the classroom now. And therefore, the paucity of exposure to English will be countered by using technology and the media in a big way. The language teaching approaches scenario in post-independence India is something like this. In the initial years, the structural approach became very popular. In all the states of India, beginning with Madras, the structural approach was adopted as a panacea. It was adopted as something that will solve all problems of English language teaching. However, at international level and in India also, we soon realized the limitations of the structural approach, and therefore we started moving towards communicative language teaching. In communicative language teaching, there is ample room for multilingual competence. It is possible to teach English not only through English, but with the help of the mother tongue, or keeping in mind the presence of mother tongue in the learner's brain. And equally important, the communicative language teaching emphasized appropriateness of communication strategy. So, language is no more seen as directed towards, language education is no more seen as directed towards accuracy. It is seen as a functional ability. In Gujarat especially, we adopted what came to be known as the MODCOM approach. The MODCOM approach was, in a way, modified communicative approach. Modified part of MODCOM meant that we had to keep in mind the multilingual social context. We had to keep in mind the abilities of the language teacher, inadequate training programs for the language teacher. We had to keep in mind various other limitations at the school level and modify our teaching in that perspective. However, MOD was followed by COM in the sense that our focus will be on communication. So our focus will be on using English for communicative purposes. Not just English as a library language, not just for reading purposes, reading comprehension purposes, because SLA, second language acquisition, has now shown that listening and speaking play a vital role in language education. And therefore, MODCOM approach made adequate room for listening and speaking also. Lastly, the NEP 2020, as we have seen, has come with a lot of hope and optimism, and it is believed that the education system in India, including teaching of English and teaching of other languages, will undergo a transformation in the years to come. By way of epilogue, let us reflect on some current trends. It is important to note that earlier English was seen as an instrument of colonization. Now it is seen as an instrument of globalization. Earlier, English was seen as something that led to enlightenment. Now it is seen as something that leads to enlightenment plus empowerment. It is equally important to note that English language teaching and English studies in general is undergoing another kind of transformation. There is a pluralization of English studies in India in the sense that the narrow focus on accuracy-based British English model is no longer prescribed. Now, we have American English, we have Australian English, we have international English or global English, and with equal respect, we have Indian English in our curriculum. So, pluralization of English studies is also an important feature of the current scenario. We now want to learn English for a global role for India. We now want to learn English for global communication purposes. And therefore, we are not approaching English education in a timid manner. We are not approaching English education with a sense of guilt. We are approaching English education with a sense of empowerment, and we would like to strengthen the hands of our teachers and learners by enabling them to use English for a variety of purposes, but most important, for academic excellence in school education and university education. Thank you.
स्वाध्यायः परमं तप